Hello, comrades. We are starting now the May the 1st Internationalist Act of the International Workers' League, the IWL. The 1st of May, for us, is a day of struggle of the working class against the employer's domination, against capitalism, which is even more important nowadays, when the bourgeois governments all over the world have decided and explicitly demonstrate that our lives do not matter. Execute a real genocide by allowing the current pandemic and the global recession to unemploy and kill millions of workers of COVID-19 or hunger. Capitalism is the one killing us through the novel coronavirus and the global recession, and kills unequally. There are infinitely more deaths among workers than in the bourgeoisie. I wish we could be present in public protests in every country, in all corners of the world, to speak with our comrades and raise our red banners. We couldn't do that due to the risk of contamination because of the pandemic, which is why we carried through this act in this format. We believe the socialist revolution must be international, which is why we built the IWL, with parties in many countries around the world. So now here, comrades from many countries. We are working class comrades, with different languages, but only one goal: the struggle for the revolution, the struggle for socialism. To start off our act, we will hear Fabiana from PDAC, the Communist Alternative Party from Italy.
May 1st is a very important date for labor movement, an important day for the struggle of workers around the world. On this day, a tragic event that took place by the end of the 19th century in Chicago, USA, is remembered. Some workers were condemned to a death sentence for having organized a day of strike in defense of the 8-hour labor shift. But from that tragic event, from the defeat of the struggle, came an important fact. From then on, in the following years, the sacrifice of those workers was remembered with initiatives such as strikes and struggles in many countries around the world, a tradition that remains today. As time passed, the capitalist governments have attempted to rob this day of its original meaning, which was one of struggle and strong class confrontation. They have attempted to transform May 1st into a holiday, a day of rest, as many others. But today, more than ever, it is important to reclaim the original meaning of this day. The events around the world verify this. Today, more than ever, the working class and the toiling masses are under attack. Their lives are threatened not only by the pandemic, but also by the capitalist recession. The actions of the capitalists and their governments, which are irresponsible governments, are causing ravages on the toiling masses. In the name of profit, many factories that do not produce indispensable goods remain open, sending workers to work in insecure places, risking their lives and that of their loved ones. To finance the banks, public health has been literally dismantled. Therefore, today, there are not enough hospitals to treat the ill. Around the world, hundreds of thousands of proletarians die alone, without health care at home, if they are lucky enough to have a home. As for Europe, the capitalist governments of the richest countries give billions to the entrepreneurs to protect them before the crisis, as they leave the toiling masses in misery. In Italy, the government has assigned 400 billion euros to the enterprises, while it has not given a single euro, not even a cent, to the unemployed and the workers who have lost their jobs. The same happens in other European countries. The policies are the same, whether we are dealing with governments that come off as left wing, as in the Spanish state, or extreme right wing, as in Hungary. Today, this government's greatest crime is to deceive the workers, risking their lives. They are saying the pandemic is not so serious or it is coming to an end. They are seizing the proletariat's desperation, their fears to invent a non-existent reality. All bourgeois political leaders are becoming Bolsonaros. From Macron to Merkel, from Conte to Sanchez, they are pretending the issue is not so serious. They say the economic activities could restart in short. In Italy, with an average of 500 deaths per day, which is worse than a war, their slogan is, "Today, we must start again." They are deliberately deceiving the worker and toiling masses to send them to the slaughterhouse. All this for what? To stand for the profits of a few multimillionaires, completely obsessed by their thirst for wealth. In Italy, at the beginning of the pandemic, the national and local governments launched the slogan, "Italy does not stop." The result has been tens of thousands of deaths in many cities. There is nowhere else to put the bodies. Shocking images from the United States show mass graves in the poor districts of the metropolis. We do not dare imagine the situation in the peripheries of the world, in the poor metropolis of Asia and Africa. No one refers to the deaths in these continents. They are not even considered worthy of an obituary. The ongoing crisis shows once again how capitalism is a barbaric, inhumane, and irrational system. The life of millions of proletarians are of no importance before the economic interest of a few millionaires. This shows that what Trotsky wrote a bit less than a century ago in the transitional program still applies. Without a social revolution in the next historical period at that, a catastrophe threatens the whole culture of mankind. Then, in 1938, the catastrophe unfortunately took place before the International Socialist Revolution. It was World War II. Now, a new catastrophe is announced, but we may stop it. The revolutions we have seen in the past months throughout the world may stop it. From Chile to Argelia, the enormous protests in defense of the climate, or the great women's demonstrations against male chauvinism. Revolutions did not come to an end with coronavirus. The administrations seized the pandemic to increase repression, but they cannot stop the lessons left by the great demonstrations to the working class and the proletarian masses around the world. The lessons of the possibility to overthrow capitalist system through struggle. And we believe that even in Italy, in these difficult times, the workers have been able to give the workers around the world a lesson. While Italy is presented around the world as the epicenter of the pandemic, the Italian working class entered strike. While union bureaucracies signed an agreement with the government and capitalists to allow industries to continue producing profits, steel workers of tens of factories stopped production. They organized long, spontaneous, and highly participative strikes, forcing capitalists to shut down the factories. We would like to dedicate our May Day to these workers, the Chilean, Algerian revolutionaries, to the students who took to the streets to stand for climate, to the women marching against male chauvinism. For the International Workers' League, May 1st is and will continue to be a May Day of class struggle and revolution. The May 1st that the strikers in Chicago in the end of the 19th century would have wanted.
The movement towards socialism, the sympathizing section of the International Workers' League, Fourth International in Ecuador, greets IWL May Day rally. On this May Day, we call for solidarity from the international working class with the peoples who have been affected by COVID-19 pandemic, particularly with the Ecuadorian people in the city of Guayaquil, currently hit by more than 7,000 deaths, being the working people the main victims, a consequence of the capitalist policies implemented throughout Ecuadorian history. We are convinced that only internationalism and class solidarity can save the peoples of the world. From the Workers' Party of Costa Rica, we greet our brothers and sisters from the IWL on this May 1st. In Central America, we face the bourgeois and state policies to place the burden of this crisis brought by the coronavirus on the backs of the working class. Central America lives the worsening of unemployment, hunger, and forced migration. Before then, it's more urgent than ever to raise a socialist and revolutionary alternative like the one promoted by the Workers' Party and the IWL across the world. Therefore, we call to build this tool for the struggle of the working class worldwide on this May 1st.
Now we will hear a comrade from the socialist voice, the workers' voice from the United States.
We all know that the Trump administration is failing to respond to the COVID-19 pandemics. It has responded in a both criminal and racist way. We say it's criminal because of Trump's constant denial of science and of the advice of doctors and healthcare specialists. And we say it's racist because of his recurrent anti-Chinese and anti-Asian rhetoric, such as the infamous label Chinese virus, or the constant references to Pearl Harbor and the invocation of World War II imaginary, an anti-Asian and chauvinistic imaginary that led in this country to the creation of concentration camps for Japanese during World War II. Racist also because we know that deportations have not stopped, and more than 33,000 immigrants are today detained in immigration centers held by ICE without basic healthcare protections. Racist also because both federal and state administrations refuse to release people in prison and jail, where most of the inmates are black or brown. But this is not just about the failure of Trump. It is about the bipartisan consensus once again to put profit over people. Both Republicans or Democrats share an anti-workers agenda. And that's why they made this very clear very quickly that their priority also is to reopen the economy. Trump is pushing to reopen the economy as soon as possible, and that means to send people to work without basic protections. And this bipartisan alliance was crystallized in the stimulus package, which passed with almost unanimous bipartisan support in the houses. Both parties are trying very hard to work together to save the system that is killing us, capitalism, but are not working to save us. On March 27th, the House passed an historic $2 trillion stimulus package, with bipartisan support, as I just said. And after denying the crisis for weeks, then the government pretends to be jumping into action, and both parties mobilize for action, and they present this bailout as a bailout for everyone, from the unemployed to big businesses, a bailout for all. But we know that in reality, this bailout is a combination of a massive bailout to major corporations, who just got a big, huge tax break 2 years ago, and a mini bailout for workers. The stimulus plan includes $500 billion in direct loans to major businesses and corporations, with no strings attached. No need to keep workers on the job, no minimum wage regulations, no basic protections. And in addition, is giving more than $400 billion to the Federal Reserves that will translate in $4 additional trillion to corporations. And for workers. For workers, there is a mini bailout, a one-time payment of $1,200, small help for unemployment, and some postponement of student loans. So in short, the stimulus package is giving 17 times more money to corporations than to working people.
The coronavirus pandemic, which emerged at the end of 2019, has pushed the global economy to the verge of total collapse, spread worldwide panic and confusion, and exacerbated the precarious and nightmarish situation faced by working people around the globe. The working class is facing the brunt of this disaster, as workers are losing their jobs or having their wages and hours cut, and are at risk of being displaced from their homes. In the US, where health insurance is tied to employment, this means that people are being cut off from their health insurance plans as well.
As is usual in the capitalist United States, the brunt of this crisis is being borne by the most marginalized and oppressed of the working class. Workers from Black, Latinx, Native American, and other racially oppressed backgrounds represent a shockingly disproportionate percentage of the COVID-19 related deaths. This is due to the inequities in accessing healthcare and to an overrepresentation of workers of color in precarious jobs that have either been eliminated without pay or that are putting workers at a higher risk of contracting the disease. To give a concrete example, Black people, who comprise about 32% of Chicago's population, represent 70% of the COVID-19 related deaths in the city so far. And this crisis is also particularly affecting women, for we are seeing reports of an increase in domestic violence, and some states are using the shelter-in-place measures to curtail or even suspend the access to abortion.
From the working class movement Pakistan, in the name of IEC and militancy of International Workers League, 4th International, dear comrades, we wish to express our revolutionary greetings and felicitation on the occasions of international meeting. We express our wishes that IWL 4th International leadership continue harvesting successes, extended diffusion and influence. With our best wishes, long live International Workers League 4th International. Workers of the world unite.
After 100 years of May 1st struggles, states and governments continue to harass fighters like Sebastián Romero, to arrest the heroes of the Chilean revolt, Johnny Escuela and Milagros Salas. With the excuse of the pandemic, they militarize neighborhoods, not to fight back the virus, but for the fear of the rebellion that might emerge from the working class. That's why we must restart solidarity, self-organization, workers' picket lines, self-defense and workers' militias to fight back this economic crisis and pandemic that subject all humanity.
And right now we'll hear our comrade Maria Rivera from MIT, the International Workers Movement from Chile.
On this May Day, we want to start by paying tribute to all those who have fallen because of the hunger plans applied by all the bosses' governments on the orders of imperialism all over the world. And in Chile, we want to pay special tribute to the ones fallen in the revolution that we started on October 18, 2019. Almost 40 people have died, 400 people have lost their sight, totally or partially. Dozens of people have been sexually abused and raped by police and army officials. Millions of us went out to the streets, filled the squares, the streets, and turned the Dignity Square into the nerve center of the revolution. Businessmen and the government of Piñera, those corrupt ones, unleashed the most brutal, the most furious repression against their worst enemy, in Piñera's word, the mobilized people of Chile. But we continue. We are still in the streets. This revolution was only paused to take care of ourselves during the pandemic. Those of us who can be in voluntary quarantine and those who are in mandatory quarantine. But we must also say that this boss's government has not been capable of declaring total quarantine because it does not care about the lives of the workers and the people. It does not care about the lives of the poor. So we're taking care of ourselves. The goal of coming out healthy, of defeating the pandemic, is to take back the streets, to take up and deepen this revolution. Because we know that those 10 families and imperialism took everything from us. They took away our natural resources and all of our rights. We don't have the right to health, education, housing, work, or decent pensions. We have a number of old people who end up committing suicide when they retire or dying because they have no way to live. They have no way to feed themselves. They have no way to be cared for in hospitals. They die on stretchers. They die in the corridors, queuing up, waiting for attention. That is Chile, the neoliberal model implemented by Pinochet and continued by the consultation governments. Ricardo Lagos, Michelle Bachelet, Eduardo Frei, Patricio Elwin. And then Piñera came also to deepen this model. But the people and workers in Chile have said enough. Enough capitalism in Chile, with any model, neoliberal or otherwise. Capitalism is not working anymore. And it's not working because it does not have the conditions to solve the problems of the millions of workers in the world who, together with their families, are already working in slavery conditions. Chile has not been the only country. There have been major rebellions, as we've seen: Hong Kong, Iraq, Colombia, Ecuador, a couple of years ago in Argentina as well. And why? Because workers and the people know that this capitalist system is inhumane and starving. This cannot go on any longer. We have to destroy it. We have to end it. So all of us in Chile have to encourage these rebellions. Because we have the right to rebel. We have the right to defend our families. We have the right to build a new society for future generations. It is our obligation as revolutionaries. So we must say that this May Day is one more May Day of struggle, because despite not being able to be in the streets, we are defending our rights from each one of our trenches. And we will manage to do it. We will manage those owners of the world to give us what they have stolen from us. In Chile, we will continue, no doubt about it. We'll take up the slogan, "Out with Piñera and all the corrupt ones." We will not stay quiet. The pandemic can be defeated and the revolution will triumph in Chile. Moreover, we believe that it is an urgent task of this revolution to free those 2,500 comrades who are in prison because they are part of this revolution. Their imprisonment is a consequence of this revolution, and it is the task of the revolutionaries and fighters of the world to make a solid campaign demanding these spurious authorities, these inhuman authorities, to free them immediately. Because they risk their lives in prison. Because even the Chilean Supreme Court prosecutor said so. Prisons are time bombs. We must free them, and for that, we need the help of all the fighters in the world. We must continue and advance in this campaign. Not a single political prisoner in the world should be in jail. They must all be released, especially the 2,500 comrades in Chilean prisons. Today, this 1st of May, we say it has become evident with the pandemic that capitalism is no longer viable. It's not going to give any answer. Therefore, it is an urgent need to make a world revolution. Long live the world revolution. Long live May Day. Good afternoon, comrades. My name is Maria Paula. I am a doctor and a member of the Socialist Workers' Party of Colombia. We want to extend to you on this May Day a strong revolutionary embrace. We are in the midst of a pandemic that has taken the lives of more than 100,000 people. Due to previously existing inequalities, this has raged against the poorest, against Black people, against Latinos. Colombia has been no exception. The health measures of Ivan Duque's government include a partial quarantine, in which many are forced to work without biosecurity elements, and thousands more are forced to lock themselves in their homes with hunger, because they were living from precarious jobs. 60% of the money from Duque's emergency plan has been given to bankers and large companies, and about the same amount has been lost to corruption. But the people have not stopped fighting. Red rags and flags, cacerolazos and rallies have spread throughout the country. We health workers are also taking ahead a major struggle for biosecurity and formalization, since personal protection elements have not reached most places in the country, and 80% of the workers are on junk contracts. That is why today, in our window, we are waving the red flag, symbol of the struggle of the working class, but also, at this moment, symbol of the fight against hunger, and for a real emergency plan to be paid with the resources that, in most of our countries, are destined to the payment of the foreign debt. The current situation shows us more than ever that the contradictions are sharpening, that the possibility of socialism or barbarianism is becoming more and more real, and that it is capitalism that prevents us from consistently confronting the pandemic. Thus, it is urgent that we build our revolutionary parties around the world. It is urgent to fight for socialism, stop paying the debt, and long live to the internationalist and proletarian Mayday.
To conclude our act, we invite our comrade Vera from PSTU, the Unified Socialist Workers' Party from Brazil. For the first time in over 100 years of the existence of the 1st of May, a day of struggle of the working class, men and women who work in the factories, in the public and private sectors, in commerce and services, aren't going to occupy the streets to denounce the evils of the capitalist system. Because the coronavirus pandemic, which spread like a wildfire in every continent, showing that neoliberal globalization is as agile as it is murderous, replaced the isolation as the key to defend the working class lives. In the 21st century, with all of the technological and scientific advancements and the interlacing of the multinational companies and their governments, coronavirus uncovered capitalism in real time. The images of the catastrophe flood social media. On one hand, the working class trying to protect themselves from the virus and guarantee their survival. On the other, big businessmen, bankers, and the governments of different stances overriding our lives in trying to protect their businesses. Even so, the virus stalked almost half the planet and crushed the already ruined capitalist economy. In the face of the tsunami, the bourgeoisie debates and self-divides in the dispute for the best path to safeguard their own interests. Is a house of cards falling down in the IMF's dark predictions, which already assume an international recession and the possibility of an economic depression comparable to 1929. This is exactly where all of the working classes and all of the humanities impasses and fates reside. Trump and Boris Johnson at first refused to adhere to the quarantine and social isolation according to the World Health Organization's orientations. They backtracked when the United States became the pandemic's epicenter, and when England's Prime Minister and part of the royalty were infected. China and its bloody dictatorship, which had already ferociously repressed the Hong Kong's youth and working classes struggle, kept the coronavirus epidemic in secret and only began partial quarantine after the city of Wuhan became internationally known for their dead. The running of the Chinese industry was imposed above the lives of the elderly and the poor, but gained the support of most of the world's left in the name of a supposed defense of communism. In spite of the revolution, China was never socialist and has communism only in its flag and the name of the party. It's a capitalist country that holds its main business with the United States but also countries governed by reformists, neoliberals, and the far right, such as Bolsonaro in Brazil. The same left in Latin America defends the dictator, genocidal, and bourgeois Maduro government, supporting actions that submit the population to a humanitarian crisis in order to guarantee the payment of the external debt and to fill up the safes of the corrupt bourgeoisie concentrated in the high command of the Venezuelan army. Because of coronavirus, the situation of misery, death, and pursuit of refuge in other countries will be a lot worse. Alberto Fernandez in Argentina, also praised by the left, represses workers and the poorest in the neighborhoods, while the pandemic contaminates many. And in Cuba, which suffers from the same problems as other capitalist countries in the pandemic, aggravated by the Castrist dictatorship, which lies about the number of deceased and infected. Capitalist economy can indeed stop. The quarantine, in spite of the bourgeoisie's wishes, currently paralyzes 40% of the planet. We can halt the remaining 60%. Because when the workers stop, the capitalist system stops. To help the world in order to save our lives, and once alive, secure our survival on Earth. And with that, reestablish our humanity stolen by this system, infested by murderers and thieves, who very well dressed and living in their palaces and mansions disseminated the virus. But it's the workers, the elderly, and above all the poorest, black and Hispanics, who are the main victims, as it's visible in the heart of the capitalist empire, where 30% of the population is black, but they are 70% of the dead. The virus doesn't choose the social class to infect. The system defines who has and who hasn't the right to treatment, and with it, the possibility to live. It is truly a war. We have to learn the lessons the pandemic teaches us. In these hard times, solidarity among the poorest, in the neighborhoods in the urban and rural areas, has been vital for survival and protection. They are real schools of self-organization. In the face of the greater troubles, we don't find support in governments, much less in millionaires. After this pandemic has passed, our duty is to sweep those parasites from power. To fulfill such a task, workers, the poor, black men and women, natives, LGBTs, small and medium business owners require an instrument. The same way millionaires control the state. The working class has to, while quarantined, develop and potentialize self-organization and practice solidarity in the neighborhoods and workplaces, nationally and internationally. But it's crucial to build the Revolutionary Party. We have to offer our class the IWL, the International Workers' League, an embryo of an international revolutionary party. We are against all bourgeois parties and the leftist parties that offer solutions to the problems that strike us within the next elections, such as PT, Syriza, Broad Front, Sonder, and Podemos, within capitalism. These parties lie and sell illusions. The IWL is the party that carries the certainty. The worst of our assassins is the capitalist system and its state. The duty of the international working class is to destroy them, because the virus that kills us is the result of the destruction of nature, the agony of hunger and unemployment, violence and humiliation of women and black people, the withdrawal of rights for those who work, and the deaths of our parents, our children, our partners. And our drama and suffering each day is a necessity for capitalism in its rampant fight for profits for banks, big landowners, multinationals. That is the present and the future capitalism holds for us. Enough crying and burying your dead. The necessity to build a socialist society is urgent. Outside of that, we're only left with barbarism. We require a socialist society because its objective is to ensure the satisfaction of human needs, protecting nature, investing in science, culture, and solidarity, and the socialization of all of the riches produced for all of society. That's what we want and need. And in that struggle, there are no shortcuts. Either they win or we do. The end of the private property of big businesses and banks, the socialization of riches produced according to the necessities of all of those who work, full employment and control of the production and companies by their workers in the urban and rural areas, where all of the decisions about the economy and politics be defined by base organizations in assemblies, popular councils. The IWL is the international party dedicated to that socialist revolution. Come and get to know our party, and such as the wildfire. As Marx said, workers of the world, unite. Long live the IWL and the World Socialist Revolution.